Diamonds? No, not even close. The answer is a drug, fentanyl. The DEA says 2 milligrams can be a potentially lethal dose. 2 milligrams, about the weight of a few grains of salt. Now do the math with me. 1 kilo, 1,000 grams. According to the DEA, 1 kilogram has the potential to kill 500,000 people. 500,000 from something that fits in a small bag. And that's when you understand the business. Tiny product, lightweight, easy to move, but capable of becoming a grotesque machine of money. And that, my friend, isn't just a crime story. It's one of the most profitable industries on the planet. But the really interesting part isn't the drug. It's the story you've been told about it. For years, the narrative has been simple. Drugs come into the United States because Mexicans bring them. They cross the border, they sneak through the desert, they outsmart the authorities, they poison the country. Then along came Donald Trump, standing behind a podium like a casino owner selling a bad dream, repeating the same line over and over. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're bringing drugs. And here's the funny thing about the human brain. Hear something enough times, and eventually it starts sounding like truth. But hold on. No, really. Hold the hell on a second, because when you look at the official numbers from the U.S. government itself, the story starts to crack. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says more than 90% of the fentanyl they intercept is seized at legal ports of entry. Legal crossings, not the desert, not caravans, not some Hollywood tunnel fantasy. Official border checkpoints. And CBP adds a detail that makes the room go very quiet. Most of those smuggling attempts happen in vehicles driven by U.S. citizens. Let me say that again. U.S. citizens, not migrants, not foreigners, American citizens. But someone always raises the same objection. Okay, maybe they're just being used to cross it. Maybe. So let's look somewhere else. The U.S. Sentencing Commission, the people who track federal criminal sentences. In fiscal year 2024, they reported something interesting. 83.5% of the people sentenced for fentanyl trafficking were U.S. citizens. 83.5%. And if you widen the lens, across all federal drug trafficking cases that year, 80.4% of those sentenced were U.S. citizens. So let's line up the pieces. According to CBP, most fentanyl seizures happen at legal ports of entry, often in vehicles driven by U.S. citizens. According to the U.S. Sentencing Commission, most people convicted of trafficking fentanyl are U.S. citizens, and most people convicted of drug trafficking in general are also U.S. citizens, which raises an uncomfortable question. If someone insists on turning this into a story about nationality, if someone insists on repeating the line, "They're the ones bringing the drugs," the numbers tell a very different story. In Commission, most people convicted of trafficking fentanyl are U.S. citizens, and most people convicted of drug trafficking in general are also U.S. citizens, which raises an uncomfortable question. If someone insists on turning this into a story about nationality, if someone insists on repeating the line, "They're the ones bringing the drugs," the numbers tell a very different story. In Commission, most people convicted of trafficking fentanyl are U.S. citizens, and most people convicted of drug trafficking in general are also U.S. citizens, which raises an uncomfortable question. If someone insists on turning this into a story about nationality, if someone insists on repeating the line, "They're the ones bringing the drugs," the numbers tell a very different story, because the majority crossing, the majority trafficking, and the majority appearing in federal sentencing statistics are American citizens. Now let's be clear about something. Mexico is part of this story. Cartels exist, violence exists, supply chains exist, but not in the cartoon version some politicians sell, not as a universal scapegoat. And here's where the irony gets beautiful. Because while certain speeches paint Latinos as some kind of economic burden, the numbers tell another story entirely. A UCLA report found that in 2025, the Latino GDP in the United States reached $4.1 trillion. If that were its own country, it would be the fifth largest economy on earth, bigger than the United Kingdom, bigger than France, and since 2019, it has grown faster than China's economy. So no, that's not a burden, that's an economic engine. Workers, entrepreneurs, consumers, people helping keep a massive part of the American economy alive, and that's the real irony. While political rhetoric sells a simple villain, the data tells a far messier story, because when the narrative says one thing and the numbers say another, you're no longer looking at an opinion.